Splat! So I've been doing a bit of review reading recently, and I've deduced that a lot of people didn't really like Outlast 2, but those same people really loved the first Outlast. Personally, I'm on the complete flip side of the argument.
The original Outlast was a huge indie hit that exploded a few years back, and it was a game that not only helped prove to the world that survival horror was definitely still a genre worth putting effort into, but also helped in terrifying a huge number of people that forgot what scary games even were. In my opinion, it succeeded in most places. It looked absolutely fantastic. The night vision camera battery system not only provided a terrifying filter to the action, but also induced panic as your only safe haven was limited, and it was full of memorable characters. Everything else though I could live without. The story I found pretty shit overall, with one of the most random and anticlimactic endings in gaming history. The character designs were so overly done with the intent to disturb that they just came across to me as funny and leathery, and people can commend the claustrophobic level design, but honestly, all this meant for me was that every single chase ended up with running around tables, waiting for an enemy to enter a room, and then looping them around that same table and sprinting away. I never felt oppressed or too scared to move in Outlast because of those things. It was just a little fun haunted house romp for me with a few big issues, and if I were to review it today, I think I'd give it a 7 or roundabouts.
But here, part of this lovely Trinity collection I got on PS4, Outlast 2 comes out, and despite it being a sequel to one of the biggest and most well-loved horror games ever released in recent memory, everyone seemed to immediately forget about it. And what's funny is that I can totally understand and see why people did not like this game over the first one. I'm just one of the few, I guess, that doesn't agree with that statement. And I don't love Outlast 2, don't get me wrong, but I did find it a bit scarier than the original, and I did enjoy my time with it a lot more than the original. Why is that though? Well, that's what this video is for, so watch it, you fucking idiot.
I think it's imperative to say, first of all, that the game looks fucking stunning on PS4 Pro, one of the best looking indie games I've ever seen, and I can't believe a small team was behind it. Clearly the budget was a bit higher after the success of the already beautiful original Outlast, but now there's so much more detail. Light is used in way more experimental ways, and there's so many more opportunities for the devs to stretch their legs with original locations, both outdoors and indoors, instead of the very samey hospital hallways from the original game. Character models and overall designs I found much more imposing and grounded in reality, and therefore way more threatening, unlike the cheesy, ridiculous enemies from before, and voice performances are totally demented and contribute a lot to the atmosphere. This also means that when slightly more supernatural things begin to happen, it's inherently more shocking and unexplainable, especially when you can't even process what's chasing you and killing you since you're too busy panicking. That thing in the school, I don't even know what it actually fully looks like, but because it looks so different from anything else in the game, it actually really did freak me out. It's not just visuals that have seen a boost though. In fact, the gameplay has evolved in many places. Most would argue for the worse, but I would say it makes an admirable attempt to do something different without just being a copy of the original game, and I think for the most part it does it well. The introduction to the game sets the mood perfectly unless you know how different it is from the second you get control of Blake, your main character, looking for his kidnapped wife Lynn after a terrible helicopter crash above an area they were investigating a strange murder case. Within the first 15 minutes of actual player control, you're not only surrounded in pitch blackness in an open village with random community members eyeing you up as the music swells, but then your first life or death chase bombards you very fast afterwards, letting you figure out on your own that you need to use the environment around you more than ever to figure out where you're even going, let alone stay alive. This all happens in the first 15 minutes.
One of the immediate criticisms I saw to the design of Outlast 2 was in the beginning parts of the game when you have your first chase. People complained that you're going through the village, you're trying to figure out what's going on, and then all of a sudden the chase happens, all of a sudden, no warning, and kills everyone instantly, and there's no chance for you to react, and it's all a bit cheap and everything. I don't honestly agree with that at all. I don't see what people are talking about. When I was playing the game, I was so on edge while I was going through the village and going so slowly and anticipating something to happen and all the people staring at you and everything and people running away in the distance. I wasn't going through this game fast at all. So when I got to that bit, I saw the threat coming. It was still a shock, it was still a surprise, but I saw the threat coming and I was able to get around it. First go, no problem. I think in this case it's more if you play fast, you will die. It's that simple.
You also get many elements of the dark plot about two warring religious factions laid out bare in front of you, as obvious as jumping on a mountain of child corpses, and it just gets more fucked up from there, don't worry. The intro also demonstrates how much more open the game is, which means there's more places to run, but more ways to die. You can hide in so many areas and behind so many more bits of the environment to keep stealth sections as tense as a sphincter. You can even dive underwater and hide and peek your head while inside barrels, which does help since enemies enemies don't just chase you anymore, but also use ranged weapons to get you on your toes. The moment I realized this wasn't on the same level as the original game with its running loops around tables to trick enemies shit was when I was being chased by Marta with the big pickaxe while holding and pushing a cart towards a gate to jump over it. Her senses were not only very fine-tuned, but it all took place in an open and windy Old West-style village, like a theme park village, and when I was spotted by her, I tried the classic run in a circle around the houses to trick her into following me and then repeating, but then she actually predicted I'd do that and so headed me off at the opposite end of the loop, and it was pretty creepy, and I ended up having to hide and trick her while she was still patrolling around where she thought I was. There are overall a lot more chases in Outlast 2 compared to the original, but I feel they complement the more open level design, and unfortunately in the Catholic school flashback parts, these can have a bit more trial and error than what I would have hoped, especially in one part where you have to follow a little girl into a locker with absolutely no indication that's what you should do, or that it would even save you from the horror that's behind you trying to kill you. It's really kind of weird. Overall though, I felt they arrived at very precise moments just when you least expected them and can emit pure panic off of the screen. And you know what? Another complaint I've read a lot is that the game doesn't give you a single bit of signposting or clue on where to go while being chased, and people would give up after like 2 tries, but I'm afraid to say it's not that difficult, guys. It's not obvious on where to go, absolutely, but the telegraphed goalposts are definitely well integrated into the environment and don't feel insulting, and like any great horror game, make you feel unsafe and not knowing what's around the next corner, or while you're being chased to death. Exploring at the same time as hiding or running for your life is an incredibly tense gameplay style, and as I learned from playing, if you don't know where you're going, follow any kind of light source, crates or boxes leading up to any holes in the ceiling, and use bloodstains or scratches on the floor or surrounding cliff faces to know where to climb or slide underneath. It actually gives you more signposting than you could imagine. Again, it's not totally obvious, but if it were, it would be way too easy and completely fucking boring, and more pointless to be in a more openly made game. Not to mention too safe and similar to the original game. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of a look around to try and figure out where you gotta go, and once I used logical environment reading more often, I never got killed by poor environmental design. I never got lost in this game. Just try not to panic and keep your eyes open. It's harder, absolutely, but really damn satisfying. Not to mention in the last half of the game onwards, the open areas do tend to lessen and it heads to a more similar direction the original Outlast was like, but never too much, and there's no feeling quite like being stalked in a big open farmland, not knowing the environment quite yet, and trying to figure out where the threat is patrolling along with when it's safe to go and where you should even go, hiding in tall grass that already obscures your vision. It's so visceral and awesome. And yeah, the game is a little different in more places I'll discuss in a second, but it's more important to remember it's still survival horror. You need to scavenge the environment to look for vital batteries for your camera, find bandages and have a safe enough place to wrap yourself in them, all while figuring out where to go and staying alive against huge odds that you can't fight against. I love how your inventory is you looking down at your coat pockets. It's cute, realistic and more immersive, and you aren't just moving, hiding and running. You actually do more things in some environments as well, whether it's pushing something heavy towards something else in order to continue while being stealthy, or even running in circles around crop fields to distract farmers and get around them that way. The camera night vision mode that drains battery is back with a vengeance because of how much darker this damn game is compared to the original, and the zooming system is back and incredibly useful, along with an awesome actual cameraman system, where you not only record footage of the awful things happening around you, but also get the chance to watch it all back whenever you want. A neat addition if you left the game for a few days and need a quick refresher. The camera also has an additional feature in the form of a brilliant high sensitivity microphone, not only perfect for hearing what's coming up ahead in the dead of the night, but also drop dead perfect for giving you a much better idea on enemy positions in the more open locations. Oh yes, and if you're hiding in a cupboard or barrel, it's better for another sense to be used through a solid opaque surface that you'd never be able to see through unless you leave yourself openly vulnerable by peeking through a gap. And when you pick up the notes in dark rooms, I fucking adore how the devs thought about how players would need to be wasting valuable night vision batteries just to read it, so designed it so you automatically take a picture of the note you picked up so that you can read it at any point later without draining the batteries. So awesome. Along with the fact that your health and batteries for your camera get refilled to full after every single death, which keeps your playtime from feeling that frustrating if you get a little bit stuck, and you never get yourself trapped in death loops. All that being said though, I just wish there was a bloody quick turn. Is there a quick turn? I've looked online, I've tried every button, I could not find a quick turn, and this would have been very fucking handy with the amount of shit that pops up in front of you.
So yes, the lack of a quick turn feature is a bit of a bugger in a very chase heavy game. It doesn't ruin it in my opinion, but it is still, like I said, a bit of a bugger. It would have highly benefited from it. But when the game wants to surprise you with the AI as much as it does with all the new tiny little gameplay mechanics. I think it does so really brilliantly to keep it constantly unpredictable and spooky.
The unforeseeable cultists that inhabit this deranged village mostly want to kill you, but also sometimes will only hurt you if you go near them, but aren't interested in chasing you and would rather stand still staring at you from a distance and having their glares pierce through the darkness onto your night vision. It's extremely unnerving, and any kind of jump scare only happens at moments when you're so on the edge of your seat for what could possibly happen next that they're almost 100% satisfying and dangerous, not just for the sake of a cheap shot. And I don't know, there's something extremely unsettling about sticking on your camera microphone to check what's ahead, hear a load of slow wooden creaking, and then slowly walking towards what you think is the safety blanket of light, only to see a crazy old farmer with a huge machete, not talking, not patrolling, but just waiting for you. And the whole game is basically built like this, making me very worried on occasion to figure out what was even around me and what would become a problem if I didn't pay attention to it. And the story is, well, definitely a story. Despite theories and mentions connecting it to the original game, it's not a direct sequel as such, yet it's still about an abandoned island full of people mind-controlled through experimentation into believing what a sick, twisted company wanted them to, and seeing how far they could push people. It tackles the aspect of religion as a whole pretty heavily, and I don't mean any basic religion that we all know about today. We're not talking about extremism of what we already know. These guys are cultists towards something unexplained and are insane on a level I haven't seen for a very long time in a game like this. This place is populated by people genuinely believing they are above absolutely everything else that's ever existed. The father of one of the warring religions has his own fucking Bible about himself, and despite you knowing in the back of your head that what you're dealing with are just crazy people, you feel that oppression from how unhinged and firmly dedicated to the death they are about whatever it is they do believe. The same, of course, being said for the other religion, who believe the total opposite of what the other religion believes in that area, but who are just as aggressive and nasty towards you and your wife that you're solely trying to save, and nothing else. The diary entries and hastily scribbled notes are where some of the true horrors also tend to lie, and reading them alongside not knowing if someone is behind you to maul you creates a great sense of escalating threat as the fantastic score rumbles to life and the insinuations in the writing become more vile as you keep on reading. And just when you start getting enveloped into the terrifying words on the paper, you then need to run. It also has a much more fucked up, yet peaceful conclusion that makes sense compared to the original Outlast, and all the questions I had about Blake's Catholic school flashback hallucinations caused by the brainwave controlling on the island were answered, and wrapped everything up between that mini story and the real world on why Blake is experiencing this stuff really well, if in a very gruesome and disgusting way. Funnily enough though, I preferred the story as a whole to the original Outlast, but I miss the characters. Seriously, my opinions on the storytelling from Outlast to Outlast 2 have completely swapped. What I think had awesome characters but a bad story in the original is now awesome story but with bad characters in the sequel. Once you get your head around the whole mind-controlling speakers plot point, that basically explains every single motivation of every character in the entire area, so already that level of mystery and disturbing theorizing is out the window. Nobody is individual or interesting because of that. And even worse is that unlike Chris Walker, with the funniest, most normal name in the world, the naked crazy doctor and the Penis brothers in the original, you don't have that level of interaction or memorability with any main antagonist in this game, which is a huge shame. The closest you get is Marta, but like the rest of the island, she isn't too interesting. She's just out for the same shit that everyone else is. And you also do get Big Cook, Little Cook over here, who are very cool, but aren't given nearly enough time to actually have any impact on the moist, buttery base of a story that we have here.
And yes, Outlast 2 as a whole is way more difficult than the original game. It's so different in its open design and how it focuses more on chases and spectacle that half the time it really feels like you're in a situation where you can't escape, which is a great feeling to have in a horror game, but because of that it can be quite difficult in places. And yes, I do understand the criticisms for Outlast 2, I really do. I just don't agree with them. I understand that people didn't want from an Outlast sequel to look around an environment while in the middle of a chase to see if they can find bloodstains or scratches or figure out themselves. Like, some people didn't even realise that you have to basically follow the light, as it were, which ties into the religious theme now that I think about it. Pretty clever. But yeah, some people didn't even figure that out, so yeah, I can imagine where it's a little bit frustrating for some people. But I personally think the main issue here is that people wanted more of Outlast 1, which is what Whistleblower, the DLC for the original Outlast, technically the second game in this little Trinity pack here, that's what people wanted more of. I didn't want more of that, so I was very pleased. So in my opinion, personally, Outlast 2 is going to get an 8 out of 10. If it's your birthday today watching this video, happy freaking birthday to you, and please remember to stay beautiful.